Bullies target the new kid, but he's a fearless fighter nobody saw coming. Luke stepped into Maplewood High like a shadow in a bright, bustling world. The hallways buzzed with laughter and chatter, but all that sound vanished for him. Eyes turned, whispers flickered, and suddenly he was the centre of a storm brewed by Derek and his crew. Derek had a reputation, one that echoed like a thunderclap. He was tall, muscular, and wielded power like a sledgehammer. And here stood Luke, ready to face it all. The new kid, with secrets slinking in the corners of his mind and scars that were more than skin deep. "Hey, look, it's the new kid," a voice dripped with mockery. They pointed, laughing, pushing each other to provoke him. Derek had chosen his target. The tension was thick, like the air before a thunderstorm. Luke felt the knot in his stomach tighten. He bit his lip, trying to swallow fear. He came from a place where fear meant survival. But could he really handle this? The walls of Maplewood High were worn, their paint chipped, and memories soaked into the fibres. Perhaps nowhere else did they harbour secrets like this school. Strange things happened here. Or so the stories went. Ghost sightings in the gym, whispers of students disappearing. A strange aura hovered, enticing but unsettling. Luke wanted to shake it off, to blend in. But every glance in his direction was a reminder that blending in was not an option. Just then, Derek blocked his path. "What's this? A punk who thinks he can just stroll in here?" The group snickered, their laughter a chilling rhythm against the drone of school life. Luke lowered his head, feeling the heat rise to his cheeks, a flame in the cold emptiness of feeling alone. He might have looked defeated, but inside there was a fire. He had learned to fight from the streets, a skill born from necessity. But he was caught in the cycle of choice. Embrace the hero within, or let the darkness fester. The bell rang like a clarion call, signing each soul to their prison of education. Freedom for the bullies meant just lurking till the last slap of the bell. In whispered tones, the underground fight club caught his ear. Luke shuddered at the thought. A place where boys turned into beasts, fueled by anger and adrenaline. He felt the weight of it, the pull of temptation mingling with fear. Would they push him into that world? Would he have no choice but to fight? As days trudged on, every confrontation cranked up the volume of dread, and Luke found himself ever closer to the Fight Club's dark allure. Through the crack of his new life, he caught snippets of conversations, a thrill mixed with pathways to destruction. Deep down, he ached for acceptance, but quaked at what he might become. With his heart pounding and choices narrowing, Luke stood at the edge of his own future. The other boys were right. One way or another, he had to make a choice. Would he confront Derek, face the shadows of his past? Or would he let the abyss swallow him whole? The weight of the unknown hung between them, thick and palpable, an invitation to the inevitable clash that would change everything. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just do a quick check on that red button down below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content coming your way. And since you're here, smash that like button. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person in this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Luke didn't know it then, but he was standing at a crossroads. The weight of choice pressed down on him, heavy as a stone. The bell had chimed, and with it a promise of confrontation loomed. Would he confront Derek, speak from the fire within, or would he slip back into the shadows? As time passed, each day twisted tighter around him. Derek had been relentless, the taunts growing sharper, the pushes more aggressive. But it wasn't just Derek. Whispers of the underground fight club filled his ears like a siren's song. He could almost feel the thrill of adrenaline coursing through him, but he feared the darkness that accompanied it. Then came the moment that shifted everything. One afternoon, Luke pushed through the throng of students in the cafeteria. Eyes locked on the exit, mind racing. He was trapped like a fly in a web, thoughts tangled in the day's dread. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the room. All heads turned as Derek toppled backward, his chair flying. The laughter stopped. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. Confusion blanketed the cafeteria like fog. Luke's heart raced. He backtracked, stepping closer to the scene, drawn like a moth to a flame. Derek lay sprawled on the floor, clutching his chest. Panic flashed in his eyes, an expression Luke had never seen. The fear, the vulnerability, it felt strange to witness. The bullies, who often thrived on dominance, were now just kids watching a dark turn of fate unfold. "Is he okay?" a voice whispered. Luke felt a shiver crawl up his spine. Something wasn't right. He wanted to turn away, to escape the chaos, but his feet wouldn't move. Derek gasped for breath, the color draining from his face. In that moment, everything fell silent. Even the clatter of trays paused. Then came the unexpected twist. A girl from the corner of the cafeteria, Sarah, the one who sat in the back of class, always sketching, always quiet, rose from her seat. She rushed forward, kneeling beside Derek. Shadows flickered over her face, revealing recognition? Panic? It wasn't just worry. There were hidden depths in her gaze Luke hadn't noticed before. "Help! Somebody call 911!" she shouted, her voice breaking through the stunned silence. "Derek, stay with me, please!" Luke's stomach twisted. He studied them, trying to decode the connection. She had no reason to care, to reach out to the bully who had terrorized so many, including him. But the way she leaned over him, her hands trembling yet firm, spoke of something deeper. Luke felt a knot tighten in his chest. Suddenly, Derek's breathing halted. The world trembled on the edge of chaos. Sarah's eyes widened, and Luke caught a glimpse of something breaking within her. A furious whisper sliced through the crowd. "Get back! Give him space!" Derek's friend, Mark, pushed through. Disbelief etched across his face. He knelt beside Sarah, and the tension snapped. Luke realized he was witnessing more than fear. It was an unraveling. Something clicked. What was the secret here? As panic surged through him, Luke felt the heat of dread creep in. This wasn't just a confrontation between bullies and their target. This was about lives, connections, revelations. And just then, a scream pierced the air. Not from Derek, not from Sarah, but from a corner of the cafeteria, where the shadows grew darker, revealing a figure. One Luke hadn't noticed before. A figure staring, watching, waiting. The scene exploded. Luke's heart raced as he felt an unmistakable chill. He couldn't shake the feeling that everything he thought he knew was about to turn upside down. What had he just stepped into? Luke's heart raced as the chaos unfolded. He felt the chill seep into his bones, a sensation that twisted his insides. He locked eyes with Sarah, her expression a blend of fierce determination and fear. The cafeteria was a whirlwind of panic, students buzzing like angry bees. Derek lay there, breaths shallow and rapid, the laughter that usually accompanied his presence evaporating into thick, suffocating silence. What's happening? Someone murmured, their voice laced with disbelief. The shadowy figure in the corner shifted, and Luke's gaze darted to it. There was something strange about how it hovered. He squinted, trying to see through the throng. In that instant, the air felt charged, electric. Suddenly, without warning, time seemed to freeze. A piercing whistle sliced through the tension, cutting to the deepest core of everyone's fears. It was coming from the back. Luke saw the figure step out. Tall, cloaked in darkness, it made its way forward, moving like smoke. Fear crept in as everyone turned to face this unexpected intruder. The cafeteria door creaked open wider, revealing the shimmer of sunlight as the figure crossed the threshold. Enough! The voice was strong, commanding. Luke recognized it without even knowing who it was. Derek gasped, trying to push himself up. But his expression twisted in confusion and anger. "Who the hell are you?" he croaked, more threat than inquiry. "You don't remember me, do you?" The figure stepped into the light, and Luke's breath caught in his throat. It was Ben, the school's unseen outcast, the quiet kid nobody noticed. His eyes burned with intensity, a fury that Luke had never seen before. "Ben," Luke whispered, the name feeling foreign on his lips. Ben continued. "You've tormented people for too long, Derek. It ends now." His voice was calm, but every syllable had the weight of thunder. The room buzzed with electric silence, no one daring to breathe. Luke could feel the tension tightening around them like a vice grip. Suddenly, a flash of movement erupted. Ben took a step closer, and just as he did, the cafeteria erupted into chaos. A painful cry echoed as Sarah slipped in her haste to reach Derek. She stumbled, her hands bracing for the ground, but her gaze didn't leave him. And then it happened. In a blink, Ben lunged forward, placing a hand on Derek's head. It was quick, almost unfathomable. An orange glow enveloped his fingers, swirling with energy, and Luke's heart dropped. Derek's eyes widened. Horror etched across his features. "What are you doing?" he yelled. But the force emanating from Ben was palpable, like a storm ready to burst. "What's happening?" Luke breathed, shock rooting him to the spot. It all clicked. The pieces of the puzzle jumbled and suddenly rearranged in his mind. Ben wasn't just the quiet kid. He was something more, something they had all overlooked. He was a force, a power wrapped in the ordinary guise of high school life. Derek convulsed, his body trembling, his face shifting from anger to fear, and then to something darker. A realization dawned on Luke. This confrontation would change everything. The dynamics of power shifting like tectonic plates beneath their feet. Then, an earth-shattering scream erupted from someone in the crowd. This one was shrill, a plea that pierced the air. The attention swung once again, just as Ben pulled back, breathless and shaken. Luke could hardly keep up as shockwaves rippled through the crowd. "Run!" someone shouted. The room flooded with panic. Students stumbled over chairs, pushing and shoving to get out. Luke felt frozen, caught in the eye of this storm. Everything he thought he'd known about Derek, about Ben, and about himself unraveled before his eyes. The vibrant world of Maplewood High morphed into a battlefield of secrets and lies. He turned back to find Sarah still at Derek's side, her face pale, eyes wide with a mix of dread and something else. Understanding. Was she in on this too? A million questions whirled in his head, an insatiable thirst for answers. The shadows loomed larger, and suddenly everything was uncertain. I need to know, Luke whispered to himself, grasping the truth that was hanging by a thread. And with that thought, the ground beneath him felt unsteady, leaving him on the edge of something far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. What truth lurked in the darkness? And what had he just stepped into? Luke's heart thundered in his chest, an unsettling rhythm matching the chaos that spiraled around him. He felt rooted to the spot, his mind racing through the surreal scene unfolding before him. Ben, the unassuming kid they all overlooked, was no longer just an outcast. The way he stood, a force of nature cloaked in darkness, sent shivers down Luke's spine. Before Luke could process everything, a loud thud shattered the air. Sarah fell to the ground, having tripped amidst the frenzy. "Derek!" she screamed, reaching toward him, her hands trembling. The desperation in her voice hung heavy in the thickening atmosphere. "Get away from him!" Mark shouted, panic rising as he shoved his way through the crowd, eyes wild. But Ben remained steady, creating space around him like an invisible barrier. And then it happened. A wail rose from the back of the cafeteria, horrifying and raw, slicing through all the noise. Luke turned to see a figure fabricating chaos. A girl with wild eyes and disheveled hair, crawling through the sea of bewildered students. It was Rebecca, the quiet girl who always went unnoticed. But today she was like a storm. "No! Stop!" she shrieked, lurching forward with a sudden ferocity. Eyes locked on Ben. Luke felt a chill ripple through him. This wasn't just shock anymore. This was a reckoning. Time froze, as if everyone around them held their breath. Ben's face morphed, surprise and concern mingling in his expression. "Rebecca, what?" "Stay away from him," she cried, her voice breaking and raw like glass. "You don't know what you're doing." Luke exchanged glances with Sarah, who was still knelt beside Derek, the tension boiling as the truth seemed to slip like sand between their fingers. They were all witnessing something monumental. Could Ben and Rebecca be connected? Rebecca didn't wait for an answer. She surged forward, seizing Ben's arm, her fingers digging in like claws. "They'll come for you if you don't." "Stop this!" Her eyes darted around, urgently looking for allies in a sea of shocked faces. Ben's anger faltered. "What? Who's coming?" His voice wavered slightly, revealing a crack in his previously unwavering stance. "They're here. You know they're always watching." Rebecca's gaze flicked to the exit, her breathing rapid as students began to murmur. The whispers churned, like wind through the trees, panic surging, eyes glancing at the door as if something terrible lurked just beyond. Luke felt a cold flush wash over him. The looming dread settled deep in his gut. "They? Who are they?" he thought, scrambling to connect the dots. Without warning, the windows rattled, a sudden gust sweeping through the room, thick with anticipation. Someone screamed from the corner, another student having zoned in on the chaos. "Look!" Their finger pointed toward the door, eyes wide in terror. Luke turned just in time to see shadows flicker there, dark shapes swirling like smoke, forming into vague silhouettes. "Run!" Derek shouted, panic stripping away his bravado. But as fear sparked across the cafeteria, it became alive. The tension shifted, fueling a surge of movement. "Luke!" Sarah called, urgency pulling her voice taut. He hesitated, trapped between wanting to protect her and the chaotic energy crackling around him. Before it's too late, Ben's voice rang out, desperate, eyes darting, the shadows creeping closer. And as the panic spilled over into screams, Luke felt the floor tremble beneath him. Was everything about to change? Did he just walk right into a battle far darker than he could have ever imagined? In that electrifying moment, shadows shifted. The air grew heavy, a clash of light and dark as the unknown loomed. More than Bullies and the new kid. Something deeper, something he never saw coming. What had he stepped into? And more importantly, how could he escape it? The cafeteria felt like a pressure cooker, about to explode. The noise of panic rose, a wild crescendo of chaos, where fear dripped into every glance. Luke's hands felt clammy, his heart racing. But as he stood frozen, something deep inside shifted, a realization brewing. This situation was spiraling out of control. The shadowy figures lurked near the gore, their shapes indistinct yet ominous. "They're here!" Rebecca shouted again, her voice cracking with dread. It was like an electric charge zapping through the crowd, snapping Luke out of his stupor. He took a tentative step forward, drawn toward the unfolding madness. "Everyone, just stay calm!" Ben yelled, but even his voice couldn't pierce the panic gripping the room. Derek lay on the floor, panting, his earlier bravado forgotten. Sarah still knelt beside him, eyes darting between the shadowy figures and Derek's face, full of worry and resolve. Then from behind the crowd, a door creaked open, but not the cafeteria's. No, it was the emergency exit at the back. It swung wide with an eerie groan, revealing a dozen figures shrouded in dark uniforms and masks. They moved as one, eyes obscured, silently stepping into the cafeteria like a whirlwind of shadows. Gasps echoed, a wave of voices shocked into silence. "Who are they?" Mark whispered, and Luke felt a cold chill creep up his spine. It was as if these figures had come straight from nightmares. Ben and Rebecca locked eyes with terror. "You shouldn't be here!" Ben shouted, backing away, fear evident in his voice. "Move aside!" one of the figures barked. Stepping forward, voice commanding and cold. Before anyone could react, a flash of light erupted from their hands, an unnatural glow that pulsed with energy. Luke squanted, heart thudding. The light surged before them like a tsunami, engulfing everything in its path, sending tables and chairs sprawling as it crashed through the crowd. The cafeteria erupted into chaos again, as students screamed, scrambling to escape. Luke glanced back at Sarah, who looked bewildered. He wanted to run to her, but the powerful force radiating from the figures kept him rooted. "Run!" Ben yelled again, panic spilling from his eyes. But the figures moved swiftly, blocking exits, creating walls out of the chaos. Then it happened. A sickening pop echoed through the air. Sudden silence. Everything paused. It was as if the world held its breath. Then, with a deafening crack, Derek suddenly convulsed, his eyes rolling back. And in that heartbeat, something changed. A rush of energy pulsed through the room, and Luke felt it, an invisible ripple, like a shockwave coursing through everyone. The shadowy figures froze, all eyes turning to Derek, who lay gasping, face twisted in anguish. But then, in a moment that shattered everything, his body contorted. With one final gasp, Derek's form exploded outward. Light burst like fireworks. Luke shielded his eyes, feeling the heat touch his skin. When he looked again, Derek was gone. Empty air where he lay, as if he never existed. A feeling spun wildly inside Luke. Was this real? The cafeteria erupted into confused noise and cries, but Luke felt the world slow as he processed what had just happened. It was the kind of shock that dripped ice into his veins. The realization hit him. Derek had kept secrets, and now those secrets were unleashed. "What just happened?" he murmured, glancing at Ben. They both stood in a trance. Rebecca trembled, her eyes wide. "It's too late now!" she cried, despair flooding her voice. "What have we done?" Luke's heart hammered in his chest as he grappled with the weight of it all. Everything he thought he understood shattered into fragments. He felt a pull, a tug at his core, as the shadows moved closer, their dark figures shifting with purpose. With the balance of power upended and Derek's disappearance hanging heavy, Luke realized he was no longer just a spectator. He was at the center of something far darker than he realized, something that would change everything he thought he knew. And so, with fear gripping him tight, he made his choice. He wasn't just going to stand there. Not anymore. He was about to step into the darkness. What lay ahead felt terrifying, but it was also inevitable. The moment had come. But what would he find when he reached out to grasp it? Luke's heart thudded as shadows closed in, their movements quickening, the air thick with fear and unspoken dread. His mind raced, trying to process the sudden disappearance of Derek. The cafeteria buzzed with erratic energy, pupils scrambling to understand this unfolding nightmare. Ben and Rebecca stood poised at the edge of chaos, maintaining a barrier against the shadows, but even their resolve felt fragile. "Luke, we need to leave," Sarah shouted, urgency lacing her voice. Luke felt the pull toward her, but his feet stayed planted, caught between the fear of the dark figures and the turmoil unfolding right in front of him. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from the back. The cafeteria doors slammed open, and a figure burst in, eyes wild with desperation. It was Jamie, the tech-savvy class nerd who always set up the AV equipment for school events, but never stepped into the spotlight. Sweat gleamed on his forehead, and he looked as if he'd seen a ghost. "They're here! They're coming!" Jamie's voice cut through the chaos, panic vibrating through his words. "What are you talking about?" Mark shouted back. Fear coiling in his gut. Those people, they didn't just come for Derek. They're searching for someone else. Jamie's chest heaved with every breath. "Look, that thing they can do. It's worse than we thought." Luke's pulse quickened. "Worse than we thought," he echoed, feeling dread spiral tighter inside him. Before Jamie could explain, a strange sound echoed, a low hum that reverberated in the walls. It pulsed like a heartbeat, rhythmic and terrifying. The masked figures paused, heads tilting as if sensing something beyond the tangible. They filled the air. "I remember now," Jamie suddenly blurted out. "Derek, he was part of this. He knew something. He wasn't just a bully. He was the key." A horrifying realization clenched around Luke's heart. "Key to what?" he choked out, his mind racing as he connected dots he hoped were misaligned. "I hacked the files," Jamie continued, breathless. I found out about some group, some project. They're not just playing around. They're experimenting with something big. Derek got in over his head. And now, a sharp scream tore through the air, cutting off Jamie's words. Luke turned to see Sarah, her face pale, as she pointed toward the shadowy figures, whose forms began shifting in a way that was eerily feral. Then it happened. A blinding flash erupted again, this time more powerful, engulfing the figures. The cafeteria trembled. The buzz of energy swallowed everything. Tables rattled, windows cracked. Lura felt a wave of heat wash over him, and in that moment, a spark ignited. The figure nearest to him exploded in a burst of darkness. But when the light receded, something shifted. The shadows had morphed, their outlines melding into one threatening entity. It grew larger, expanding like smoke. But there was something else there. Gleaming, faceless eyes, searching, scrutinizing, glowing with malevolence. It's feeding off the chaos, Ben shouted, terror lacing his voice. We have to stop it. And then, unexpectedly, the dark form pulsed, drawing in air like a vacuum, and a chilling, distinct sound echoed throughout the cafeteria. Luke, hissed a voice, so familiar it pulled at every ounce of reality he understood. His name transformed his world into a twisted ruin. You don't want to know what your true heritage is. Luke staggered back as recognition dawned, and the horrifying reality struck him like a freight train. Mon, he whispered, sensing a searing truth. All the stories. Her disappearance. The fight against the shadows, looming larger than life, was spilling into a tangling reality he never saw coming. The figures weren't just there to harm. They were searching for him. And now that connection would reshape everything he thought he knew. And worse, that truth threatened not just him, but everyone he cared about. What power dwelled in his blood? What monsters were truly hunting him, chasing after secrets he had yet to understand? He stood frozen, fear clawing at him, as the path before him turned dark and uncertain. What now awaited him in this confrontation against the shadows? The truth so close, yet so terrifyingly out of reach. Luke's heart thudded as shadows closed in, their movements quickening, the air thick with fear and unspoken dread. His mind raced, trying to process the sudden disappearance of Derek. The cafeteria buzzed with erratic energy, pupils scrambling to understand this unfolding nightmare. Ben and Rebecca stood poised at the edge of chaos, maintaining a barrier against the shadows. But even their resolve felt fragile. Khalif, Sarah shouted, urgency lacing her voice. Luke felt the pull toward her, but his feet stayed planted, caught between the fear of the dark figures and the turmoil unfolding right in front of him. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from the back. The cafeteria doors slammed open, and a figure burst in, eyes wild with desperation. It was Jamie, the tech-savvy class nerd who always set up the AV equipment for school events, but never stepped into the spotlight. Sweat gleamed on his forehead, and he looked as if he'd seen a ghost. "They're here! They're coming!" Jamie's voice cut through the chaos, panic vibrating through his words. "What are you talking about?" Mark shouted back, fear coiling in his gut. "Those people, they didn't just come for Derek. They're searching for someone else." Jamie's chest heaved with every breath. "Look! That thing they can do! It's worse than we thought!" Luke's pulse quickened. "Worse than we thought?" he echoed, feeling dread spiral tighter inside him. Before Jamie could explain, a strange sound echoed, a low hum that reverberated in the walls. It pulsed like a heartbeat, rhythmic and terrifying. The masked figures paused, heads tilting as if sensing something beyond the tangible. Then, in a blinding flash, one of the figures stepped forward. A brilliant light erupted around them, washing over the room in a kaleidoscope of colors. Luke squinted, shielding his eyes. An eruption of gasps and shouts filled the air. Remember now, Jamie suddenly blurted out. Derek, he was part of this. He knew something. He wasn't just a bully. He was the key. A horrifying realization clenched around Luke's heart. Key to what? He choked out, his mind racing as he connected dots he hoped were misaligned. I hacked the files, Jamie continued, breathless. I found out about some group, some project. They're not just playing around. They're experimenting with something big. Derek got in over his head, and now... A sharp scream tore through the air, cutting off Jamie's words. Luke turned to see Sarah, her face pale, as she pointed toward the shadowy figures, whose forms began shifting in a way that was eerily feral. Then it happened. A blinding flash erupted again, this time more powerful, engulfing the figures. The cafeteria trembled. The buzz of energy swallowed everything. Tables rattled, windows cracked. Luke felt a wave of heat wash over him, and in that moment, a spark ignited. The figure nearest to him exploded in a burst of darkness. But when the light receded, something shifted. The shadows had morphed, their outlines melding into one threatening entity. It grew larger, expanding like smoke. But there was something else there. Gleaming, faceless eyes, searching, scrutinizing, glowing with malevolence. It's feeding off the chaos, Ben shouted, terror lacing his voice. We have to stop it! And then, unexpectedly, the dark form pulsed, drawing in air like a vacuum, and a chilling, distinct sound echoed throughout the cafeteria. Luke, hissed a voice so familiar. It pulled at every ounce of reality he understood. His name transformed his world into a twisted ruin. You don't want to know what your true heritage is. Luke staggered back as recognition dawned, and the horrifying reality struck him like a freight train. Mum? He whispered, sensing a searing truth. All the stories, her disappearance, the fight against the shadows, looming larger than life, was spilling into a tangling reality he never saw coming. The figures weren't just there to harm. They were searching for him. And now that connection would reshape everything he thought he knew. And worse, that truth threatened not just him, but everyone he cared about. But just as he tried to piece it all together, the shadows converged with shocking speed. The lights dimmed, and a sudden crackle of energy surged through him. Luke gasped, a sharp pain shooting through his chest. He doubled over, feeling a strange power awaken. Luke! Ben shouted, reaching for him. But it was too late. A blinding light burst from Luke, enveloping the entire cafeteria. The shadows screamed, their forms twisting, merging together. Luke felt their fear, their anguish mixing with his own. The air vibrated as another figure emerged from the light. His mother, more powerful than he'd ever known, standing between him and the darkness. Not today, she declared, her voice booming with strength. The shadows shrieked, trying to resist her power, but it only grew. Stronger. Mom? Luke barely found his voice, confusion mixing with a glimmer of hope. Was she truly here? Had she come back to save him? But the shadows weren't done. As his mother's light clashed with theirs, another figure emerged, one more sinister. Derek. His features twisted in rage as he joined the fray, his eyes gleaming with a hunger that sent another wave of dread through Luke. Why was he back? How had he survived? Fools! Derek's laughter echoed like a jagged blade. You think you can escape the darkness? This isn't over yet. The realization hit hard. The battle was just beginning. The three forces collided, light against dark, and Luke found himself caught in the middle, torn between his past and an uncertain future. The cafeteria warped around him, swirling in chaos, and in that moment, he understood everything he thought he knew was wrong. "Mom, what do we do?" Luke shouted, searching for clarity amid the storm. But the shadows tightened their grip, and the line between ally and enemy blurred. As the room darkened, Luke felt a shiver run through him. He was about to step into a darkness far deeper than he could have imagined. What would it mean for him, for Sarah, for everyone? The questions hung heavy in the air as the battle raged, leaving Luke feeling more lost than ever. The cafeteria cracked and shook, a battleground of light and dark. Luke felt his mum's presence envelop him, a warmth he had longed for. Yet the shadows loomed, growing in size and rage. Derek's voice cut through, a twisted certainty that sent chills racing down Luke's spine. You think you can stop me? You have no idea what's at stake. Derek's laughter echoed, mocking, filled with a darkness that seeped into their bones. Luke's world twisted around him. This wasn't a mere clash of powers. It was a fight against betrayal and chaos. "Mom, we need..." Another blinding flash erupted. The shadows screamed, a desperate wail that sent shivers crawling over Luke's skin. And then, in a flash that felt like time warping, they lunged for Luke, fueled by an unseen hunger. "Luke!" His mother reached out. But the energy swirled like madness around them. Silence hung suspended. Then came the heat. From behind Luke, a massive wave of pressure spilled forth, knocking him off his feet. A burst of energy surged through him, as if a dam had broken. His heart raced, and before he could react, there it was. A strange glowing shard ripped through the chaos. It sliced the air with a shriek, radiating fear and exhilaration. "What?" Luke gasped, eyes wide. As the shard hovered before him like a beacon of truth, it pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, pulling him closer. "Stop!" Sarah cried out. But it was too late. The shard surged, enveloping Luke in blinding light. Everything felt surreal, the world blurring at the edges, and he was consumed by a flash of memories. Not just his own, but fragments of lives intertwined. The visions swirled, cheers from him in childhood, laughter at the park, warm hugs, then darkness, terror, secrets buried deep in a twisted lineage. When the light receded, Luke fell to his knees, trembling. What had he just seen? It felt as if the very fabric of his being had shifted. And at the center of that maelstrom, Derek. The shard linked them, connecting fate with foreboding intent. "Derek?" Luke whispered, the name slicing through the air. But then, the incredible twist. The figure standing among the shadows melted. No longer Derek. Now an agonizing blend of guilt and anger, revealing a deeper truth that left Luke breathless. "Luke, The voice faltered, collapsing under the weight of an awful realization. This wasn't just a fight for power. This was about family. Luke's heart cracked open, a pain blossoming inside him. He searched Derek's eyes, longing to understand. "What are you saying?" Derek, now a pale, cold shell of his former self, trembled, fear etched in every line of his face. "You need to understand. We're connected. It goes beyond us. The shadows, they want you because you're—" "Stop!" Sarah screamed, moving to shield Luke. But it was too late. Derek's eyes shattered as he thrust forward, like a puppet on strings of despair. The truth unraveling. "You're my brother," he shouted, words bursting from him, like broken glass. "It's not just you. It's all of us. They're coming to take what's ours." Every gasp, every murmur fell silent. The revelation echoed, vibrating through the cafeteria, freezing time as it clutched at Luke's heart. "Brother?" The word hung between them like smoke, heavy and poisonous. "Mum?" Luke looked, yearning, searching for answers in her eyes. But all he saw was the truth reflected back. Pain, regret, and something that felt damning. The shadows swirled again. And despair wrapped around them like chains. Just when Luke thought he grasped it all, the ground shifted underfoot. What else was hidden within their tangled past? What legacy was entwined with fear? The air grew thick with uncertainty. Uncertainties tightening around him, leaving Luke grasping at the fragments of a fate he never chose. And Derek's words hung there. The shadows drew nearer, hungry and waiting. What did it mean to bond blood with someone steeped in darkness? Luke felt the weight of decisions pressing down, teetering on the brink between light and shadow. "Luke," Derek's voice faded, leaving a chilling promise hanging in the air. "Choose wisely." And in that moment, everything changed again. The path ahead darkened, revealing a world where the truth became a weapon, leaving Luke breathless and desperate for answers. Luke's heart raced as Derek's shattered revelation hung in the air. The word brother echoed relentlessly, bouncing between walls of disbelief. His mother's face took on a look of anguish, a mix of pain and regret. The shadows around them pulsed, almost as if they thrived on the chaos of the moment. "They're coming to take what's ours." Derek's voice faded, drowned out by the tremors of disbelief that rocked through Luke. His eyes darted from Derek to his mother, searching for answers in their expressions. "They can't be." Luke's voice trembled. The room felt unsteady, swirling with possibilities that shifted like smoke. But as he grasped for clarity, something stirred in the shadows. "Luke!" Sarah's voice broke through. "We have to get out of here!" Panic flooded her voice as she reached for him, urgency painting her every word. But before Luke could respond, before he could even breathe, a deep rumble echoed through the cafeteria. Light flickered ominously above them, casting eerie shadows against the walls. Luke felt a surge of energy pulse beneath his skin, as if the very foundation of their reality was giving way. The door to the cafeteria slammed shut on its own, locking them in. A wave of darkness flooded the room, tangible and suffocating. The shadows twisted, a storm of energy swirling in on itself. Luke instinctively took a step back, heart pounding, eyes wide. What was happening? Suddenly, a loud crack exploded in the air. A blinding flash tore through the room, lancing through the shadows like lightning. Luke felt the heat enveloping him. Shields of energy crashed around, and a voice emerged from the heart of the chaos, chilling and familiar. "Enough of this," It boomed, echoing off the walls. Luke's blood went cold, recognition hitting him like ice water. "Mum!" Luke shouted, the fear crystallizing in his throat. The lights dimmed again as the voice grew louder, wrapping around them like a serpent. "You think you can keep running, Luke?" It was not just his mother's voice. It was deeper, layered with something that made him shudder. "You belong to us now." In an instant, shadows erupted from her, surrounding everything, consuming. It felt as if the very air turned electric. Hands grasped Luke from every direction, some warm, some cold, pulling him toward the light, the dark, everything blending, until he didn't know where he was anymore. Then, with a force that made the ground tremble, the shadows were cast aside, revealing a figure he had never expected to see. Standing at the edge of the cafeteria was not just his mother, but a twisted semblance of his father, alive. "Dad," Luke gasped, disbelief coloring his voice. "But you—" "Shh!" His father raised a hand, the shadows curling back into him. But beneath the surface, Luke saw the truth, the darkness that coursed through him like a river. "Luke, you're part of something bigger. We all are," his father said, gaze piercing through Luke like a spear. "No, I'm part of nothing! You were gone, you left!" Luke's eyes brimmed with hurt, the years of absence flaring through his heart. Then came the shock. "I had to leave to protect you," his mother chimed in, tears glistening in her eyes. We hoped we could keep you safe from this, from them." Luke felt as if a whirlwind had torn through him, scattering his thoughts. Shadows thickened again, swirling around his family, threatening to consume them. This wasn't just a reunion. It was a battlefield, disguised as a family gathering, and he was stuck in the middle of it all. Everything twisted again, a fog of swirling distrust and fear around him. They were living secrets, unveiling truths that he wasn't ready to accept. The deeper he delved into the shadows, the more tangled the story became. "Wait!" Luke shouted, desperation lacing every word. "What does it mean? What do you mean, part of something bigger?" But the shadows tightened, a furious storm, and Luke felt his body pulled apart, threads of hope disintegrating into darkness. As his family was engulfed in chaos, the last thing he heard was a haunting whisper echoing through the chaos. "Find the heart." And then everything exploded into darkness, leaving Luke alone. The weight of the world on his shoulders, as questions spun like wildfires in his mind. What heart? What truth? The answers clung just out of reach, as the darkness swallowed him whole. Luke's heart raced, turbulence swirling together, the memories, shadows, and the chilling realization that Derek was his brother. "No," the word escaped him in a breathless gasp. Derek stood tall, eyes wide, the chaos surrounding them. "You need to understand." He stepped closer, the shadows retracting momentarily, as if holding their breath. "They want you for more than just blood. They want our connection, the power that comes with it." Luke could feel it, the pull of the darkness. The urge to flee clashed with the urge to confront. "What power? What do you mean? What were Mum and Dad involved in?" Desperation painted every syllable. But before Derek could speak, the shadow surged again, stealing his voice. Luke felt the energy crawling beneath his skin, drawing him towards the shard that had somehow found him. "You have to harness it!" his mother shouted, urgency threading her voice as the shadows circled again. "Only you can break this cycle." The cafeteria throbbed, filled with tension. Every heartbeat thudded against the chaos. Luke felt grounded in this strange reality, anchored to something he had never wanted. "Derek! Mom! We can't just let this happen!" Luke shouted, stepping forward, determination blazing in his chest. The shadows writhed closer, and with each step, he felt the tether pulling at him. The shard pulsed brighter, urging him. "I'll try!" Luke shouted, focusing on the energy that surged. "Together!" He reached out, hand extended toward Derek, thoughts racing. They shared this heritage, this bond, and for the first time it felt like they could wield it against the darkness. Derek hesitated, but as fear lanced through him, he moved closer. "Together!" he echoed, taking Luke's hand. At that moment, the world rippled. A wave of brilliance cascaded forth, illuminating the shadows with fierce intensity. Luke felt an overwhelming force. Pain and power mingled, surging through him and Derek. Then came a loud explosion. The shadows twisted, screaming as light erupted from their connection, wrapping around them like a whirlwind. The cafeteria floor shook violently, the world fracturing in an array of chaotic colors. "Hold on!" Luke cried, gripping tighter as he felt the darkness clawing back. With a final push, they directed the energy into the heart of the shadow entity, illuminating every corner of the room. The shadows screamed, wailing like a long-lost memory being consumed. They began to tear apart, revealing figures trapped within. Faces of those lost, their screams fading into silence. As the darkness shattered and fell away, Luke felt a heavy weight lift. Then, everything fell still. Luke released a breath he didn't know he was holding. Derek swayed slightly on his feet, still recovering. There was no more chaos, just an echo of grief for the shadows that had ruled their lives for too long. "Is it over?" Sarah's voice trembled as she stood by Luke. I think so," Luke replied, glancing at Derek, who nodded, finally grasping the truth of their origins. "It's done," Derek said slowly, looking at Luke with newfound understanding. With the shadows gone, the cafeteria felt lighter, not just in the absence of darkness, but in the bond between them. "We'll find a way to make this right," Luke promised, glancing at his mother, then back at Derek. "For us," Derek replied, a glint of hope shining in his eyes. As they stood together, Luke felt the warmth of family. A chaotic, beautiful risk, but family nonetheless. Hope, fragile yet fierce, colored the edges of their reality. But as they began to step outside the cafeteria, Luke turned back, his heart tightening. "What if it's not over? What if they come back?" "I don't know," Derek said, uncertainty flooding his voice. And with that weight hanging over them like a storm cloud, they stepped into the light of a new beginning, unanswered. Questions lingering like shadows in their minds. This was just the start of their journey, a journey that now entwined their pasts and futures. Before everything faded from sight, Luke felt a chill run down his spine, whispers still echoing, reminders that darkness never truly vanishes. Here's where you come in. You need to subscribe now to the channel. Don't wait another second. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments with your reactions, theories, and what you think happens next. And don't forget to share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to know this explosive conclusion. Your support means everything, and only true fans know how important it is to stand together.